In 1984, Boston native Steve Riley makes his recording debut with the LA band Keel on The Right to Rock. Shortly following, Steve joins the upcoming platinum metal sensation WASP while opening for Kiss on the 1984 tour later that year. Steve records and tours with WASP until 1987 when he joins a rising band from the Sunset Strip, LA Guns, rounding out the classic lineup of Phil Lewis, Tracy Guns, Mick Cripps, and Kelly Nichols for the next 12 years. In 2016, Riley rejoined a Philip Lewis version of LA Guns, but when Phil and Tracy reformed, Steven left due to financial strife in the band. In 2019, Steve reformed his own version of LA Guns with his battery mate Kelly Nichols and released the comeback album Renegades. In 2021, Steve won a court battle allowing the band to continue as Rileys LA Guns. On October 23rd of 2023, we lost Steve after a severe case of pneumonia. It took me a few years to release this interview out of respect for him and his family. I'll always remember Steve and his passion for drums, his Boston Red Sox, and his one-of-a-kind drum sound and style. This is a Launchpad Live and 99 WNRR Vault interview with Steve Riley.
Hey everybody, this is Steve Riley from LA Guns, and you're listening to 99 WNRR.
Hey everybody, this is Mike Presti from the WTF radio show and livecast and host of the Launchpad Live. I interviewed Steve Riley back in 2020 in the height of COVID, and during that time we had a very open and honest conversation about everything that went on in his career, and was going to release it as a Vault interview in 2023. Unfortunately, it's when we got the news in October that Steve had passed. So I put this interview on the shelf out of respect for him and in respect for his family. So I think it's time that you guys heard it. It's a great conversation with a great, great guy in Steve Riley. Please enjoy and post your comments below. Take care, guys. God bless.
How are you, Michael? It's Steve. Yeah, good to hear from you, brother.
I tell you, it's so refreshing hearing the accent still, you know? You can't take it out, you know?
Oh, yeah. You want to know something, Mike? I've been out here in L.A. for like about 44, 45 years. I can't dump the accent.
I'm talking to you right now from New Jersey, so I know exactly what you're talking about, man. That's
right
great.
On.
How you feeling, brother?
I'm doing good. How was your holiday? Okay.
Yeah. How was your Thanksgiving? Ours was good. It was simple. We kept the grandparents away, and it was the immediate, the family and the kids, and staying safe. How was yours, man?
That's almost the same thing, man. We played it safe too, and we just did. We actually the whole year we've been following the guidelines, and I haven't gotten sick, and I don't even know anybody who has gotten sick. So these numbers are like crazy. I don't even know anybody who's caught it.
I can tell you firsthand. My brother-in-law had it, and a few childhood friends, unfortunately, are no longer with us. Not to put a damper on anything, but now it's a serious thing, man. We've dealt with it firsthand. So yeah, man.
Totally, and I'm actually really being real strict with it too, and following the guidelines, and thank God nothing's happened so far. But what a crazy year, man! Jesus.
I mean, would you ever think, as someone who's been doing this for so long, and you live and breathe by playing live and recording, and this is what you do, and all of a sudden someone tells you can't do it anymore. What does it feel like after doing it for so long?
I'm telling you, this is the first year where I haven't played not one show in like decades, and it's just unbelievable, man. And I know everybody's in the same boat, but wow, it's been unbelievable this year. It's just not one show, any of my friends or any of the bands out here in LA, and everybody's just like in a different world right now.
Yeah, it's definitely Twilight Zone. But the good thing that we do have is that we're still through technology and, taking the safe measures, we're able to, produce music and get music out there. I mean, that's the good thing.
Exactly. I mean, really, once we start talking, I mean, we were so lucky to get this album done at the end of 2019. Otherwise, we would have been really screwed if we tried to do it this year. And we were lucky; we had it all done by the end of last year.
Wow, because I would have thought it would be pretty, pretty difficult. I mean, there's bands that are doing it; they're doing it through technology, but to do it, the classic way that people, that hit in the studio, that would be a little bit difficult this year.
Yeah, and especially us too, because not everybody lives here in LA all together like we all did before. So we're all spread out all over the country. So to get it done last year, we were really, really lucky. Otherwise, to travel this year and get everybody together, it would have been really hard.
What's great about this record, and Renegades, for everybody that's listening in on this, Renegades is the new album from LA Guns, talking with Steven, and you maintain the sound, and this is as a fan of the band, as a fan of actually you personally, and we'll get into that later, but as a fan of the band, this was so incredibly awesome to have the sound intact. Because the one thing, especially when you have factions, and we know a ton of bands that have done 2 different versions or 3 different versions of the band, and you're always worried about that, but you guys maintain the classic LA Guns sound.
Mike, I got to tell you, we made me and Kelly Nichols made a really conscientious effort to do that. We know that we're a classic rock band. We know we have fans that know our sound, like our style, and like our songwriting style and sound. So we made a conscious effort. We don't want to drift too far from that sound and do something that's out of left field. So we really wanted to stay true to our sound, and we've always had eclectic records, LA Guns anyways, where one song was moving on from another song, and we never really wrote 14 hard rock songs for an album. We kind of moved around with different styles within our album and maintained our sound. And we hope we got that on this album, and I think we did. And the fans and the streaming is showing us that people are really digging it, so it's making us feel really good.
How important was it to have your battery mate back? I mean, I know as a player myself how important it is to have that person that you absolutely connect with on that level in the rhythm section. How great was it to have Kelly back working with him again?
Oh man, I tell you, it's so cool because we stayed best friends even when he dropped out of music and went into art and started doing some other stuff. And we maintained being best friends through that. We're battery mates. We're the rhythm section that played on all of the stuff from the 80s. And so we bonded really fast in the 80s. And we maintained that friendship. And he's such an underrated songwriter, Kelly. He wrote Ballad of Jane. And he wrote the first 3 singles that we released from Renegades. And so he's like an underrated songwriter, an underrated artist. He does all the artwork that we do. Anything you see that's from Renegades and what me and Kelly are doing, that's all him doing that artwork. So having him back is just a blast. And I have my best friend back and my battery mate too. So the rhythm section is intact, and we just had to add on to that. So it's been great having Kelly Nichols back.
And you guys all share in equal partnerships on the songwriting as well. Kind of like a Queen thing where you guys are all equal partners on that, right?
Yeah, like when I joined LA Guns after I got out of WASP, I realized that, it's very important. And some of the favorite bands that we have, like Deep Purple and Van Halen and bands like that, even Sabbath, they shared songwriting credits. And you know what it all really is, because you're a player too. Somebody will bring in the gist of a song, and then really it's always like this, no matter, even if somebody took full credit for a song, the band puts the finishing touches on that in the pre-production studio. And that's what exactly happened in this album. We have 4 songwriters. All 4 of us brought in songs, the gist of songs, and we finished them together. And when I joined LA Guns, I told them it was very important in '87 when I joined that we share credits. So if we get ahead, if the song does good, everybody gets ahead together. And it's a really, really democratic way of doing it. It's a great, healthy way to do it. So if there's success in the band, there's success within the whole band. So if a song gets good, then everybody shares credit in that, and I really believe everybody puts a finishing touch on a song anyways, and it was very important when I joined the band, and that's why you'll see shared credits from the 87 album, self-titled, all the way up, and that's what we did on this album too. You know, people brought in just the songs, and we finished them together, and we share credit on them, and it's just a good feeling, because if it streams well, we're all doing good. So, you know, it's just a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and and of course, because everything evolves organically when you're in the process of creating the whole song. So everyone's going to have...
Oh, totally.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. You know, even like, I'll give an example. When I was in WASP, Blackie had credit on all of the songs, but it'd be stupid to think that when we did a pre-production that me, Chris Holmes, and Randy was just sitting there and not really adding to it or putting our touch on it or suggesting stuff. So when I got out of WASP, I realized that was, Blackie kind of got credit, and he got ahead of us in being successful, and I realized it's not a really healthy way to go about a band, and it creates dissension. So when I joined LA Guns, I told them this is the way we should go. And so right now, like any publishing that we get from the old albums, everybody in the classic lineup gets the same amount of money. And I just thought it was always a healthy way to go, and it's really a reality way to go too, because as a musician that you don't just sit there in a pre-production, you really add your little touch to that song. And so that's what we've been doing all the way through with LA Guns, and we continue it now.
I think especially with your sound. Now here, growing up drummer, listening to the nice thin sound of a Slingerland from Neil, and a list of deep Ludwig snare from John, and being a person who listened to metal as well. All of a sudden there's this cat that I'm listening and watching on this video, and there's this sound. He's playing on a big rock formation, and there's this sound that sounds like a snare coming out of a cannon. And I've been waiting to ask you this question for many, many years. What is that snare you're playing? How do you get that snare? It is like a pop cannon when you hit that snare. I've always wanted to ask this of you.
I use a regular Ludwig Superphonic snare, and it's just a regular chrome snare, and I just tune it with the bottom head tight, and I'm able to adjust the top head when it gets loose, but it's really just a regular Superphonic Ludwig snare that I've always used. Even those 3 years that I've always used Ludwig, except for when I joined WASP, I got this big offer from Tama to do this endorsement, and it was just way too good to turn down. Mm-hmm. And I used Tama drums, and they gave me all of these Tama snares, and I really never used them. I still used my Ludwig Superphonics, even through the WASP years when I had the Tama drums. But I've always been Ludwig, and I use a regular Superphonic snare, man, and I just tighten that bottom head really tight, and the top head is something that I can adjust to, and if it gets loose, just tighten it up a little bit. But just really, that's all I've been using pretty much my whole life, the Superphonic.
Because you carry the crazy thing is that it carried through, not only with Inside and Command, and then it carried through on the live record, and then all of a sudden it starts with the new the LA Guns records, and the sound didn't change, which I loved. But I always wanted to find out about that snare. To me, it's one of the more iconic snare sounds, because nobody else sounds like that. Nobody other snare sounds like that.
Hey, you want to know something? When I was in both WASP and LA Guns, I had studio engineers just sample my snare drum. So in case they needed it for another session, or if they needed it and somebody's snare was lacking or something, I had no problem with them doing that too. But they would sample it. They would just have me go into the studio with my snare and just hit quarter notes and just record those quarter notes for their library. And I think it sounded really, really cool on the Live on the Raw album. I mean, it was just really, really fucking jumping out of the speakers.
It did.
I've always really took pride in the snare. And I was friends with really good friends with Barry Brandt from Angel, and he's a terrific drummer, and he was like an older brother to me when we were on the East Coast, and he had met Bonham, and Bonham showed him a couple of things that he did with his kick drum and with his snare drum and how he tuned them, and Barry shared some of those secrets with me. I never met Bonham, but Barry got to meet him and sit down and talk with him for a while in the 70s. And, and he told him a couple of tricks, and one of them was tighten that bottom head. Tighten it really good, and evenly. And then, be able to adjust the top head. And then a couple of secrets, too, with the kick drum, too. And he shared some of those secrets with me, and I forever did that because before I started recording, like in the early 70s, because I started recording in 75, I did have a looser snare drum sound. It was a little bit more looser sound, and I wasn't quite up to knowing how to tune that bottom head. And that's really the secret with drums, is knowing how to tune the bottom heads on the snare and on the toms. And if you can tune your bottom head, and people sometimes they don't realize that the bottom heads on drums are so important to be able to tune those correctly, and then the top head, you're able to fool with it a little bit more. But if you can get down tuning your bottom head on your snare and your bottom heads on your toms, then you can really get a nice tone with those, and you're able to screw around with them a little bit better.
Thank you very much. I just feel like I just went to school on that one. Thank you.
Right.
I want to go back to the record. My favorite track, without a doubt, You Can't Walk Away. Wow. Can we talk about that track a little bit? I want to talk about that one and All That You Are, which have such a great feel behind both.
I tell you what, when we started pre-production on this album in the summer of 2019, last year, we had all four of us, because we're all songwriters, we all four were sitting on material that we had not recorded for one reason or another, and we had a lot of material. We had we exchanged about 40 songs between the four of us, and You Can't Walk Away is a song that I brought in. I had written that in the 80s with a friend of mine in Chicago, and for whatever reason, with WASP or with LA Guns or with anybody, I've never recorded it. I've just been sitting on that song, and I wrote that, and I had been sitting on it for so long, and I brought it into pre-production, and it was pretty much done, and then I handed it over to Kurt Folek, the singer, and he took it and he twisted the chorus around a little bit, and he added to the chorus. Pretty much the rest of the song was already written. I had had it written for a long time, and he just added to that chorus, and he really did a fine job on twisting it and adding a little bit of a piece to it. And can you believe that? I've been sitting on that for decades. That song I wrote in the 80s, and I'm talking about the early 80s, before I even joined WASP. That's how long I've had You Can't Walk Away.
Wow. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it could be that I'm 54 and it just has that kind of resonance with me. I don't know, the Beatle-esque vibe to it. That it's one of the songs that when I went through the whole record, and I don't song skip ever, and I went through the entire 10, I was just like, this one to me, just, I don't know, from a personal standpoint, just hit me a little bit.
Absolutely, man. I was so happy with the way it turned out. Like I said, most of it, almost 3/4 of it, is what was I had already written, and then when Kurt brought it back, and he took it to his home studio, and he said, "Listen, what do you think of this part that I added to the chorus?" And he stretched the chorus a little bit, and like I said, added a little section to it also, and I thought it was just amazing. And he's a great songwriter too. He wrote Wood, he wrote All That You Are, he wrote Why Ask Why. So Kurt Folek was an unbelievable find, because he's not only a great singer, he plays all the rhythm and all the acoustic guitar on the album, and he also is a tremendous songwriter.
Was it when you were going and obviously putting this version together, and obviously doing M3 and stuff like that, and it was a great reception in M3. Was there? Were you guys already thinking when you guys did M3? Were you guys already thinking about or in the process of doing this next record and kind of like trying maybe touring and dovetailing off of this? And when this all breaks, go ahead.
Yeah. You know what? The thing is that when Kelly said he wanted to come back in, and me and him got together, and we're trying to figure out, because I told them about the offer from M3. They wanted me to come out there and play some LA Guns songs, and I asked Kelly, hey, let's do this. Let's just go have some fun. It's just a one-off, and we'll just go have some fun, because me and him co-wrote with the other classic members all of the early material, so we feel secure and confident in doing that. It's not like we were the rhythm section and we're going to go play songs that we played on the album but somebody else wrote. They're all songs that we co-wrote. So I said, let's go have fun and play M3. And it really was just that we were going to do M3, see how it went, and then see what happened after that if we wanted to do a couple more summer shows. It snowballed. The show went over so good. Kurt and Scotty Griffin, they did such a tremendous job, and the show was reviewed so good by the fans and other people. And a good friend of mine, Mr. Fawn, he ended up filming that from the front on one of his cameras, and it was all over the internet. And so with that show going over so good, it scored us right away. New Breed Management out here in LA with Eric Baker and Bobby Collin, they signed us right away. They said, we want to work with you. And from there, just weeks later, they brought us the Golden Robot and said Golden Robot wants to do a record. So from that M3 show, and just the idea of going to have fun and do the one show and see what happens and just have fun doing it, and it snowballed into a management deal, right into Golden Robot Records wanting to sign us, and immediately going right into a pre-production that summer. So we did the show in May, and we were in pre-production in the late summer, right in there, maybe mid to late summer. And there was no, a master plan of us doing this and then doing that, and then we're going to go do this. We had nothing like that. We were just going to go and have fun doing M3, and just me and Kelly playing together again with a couple of guys that we thought were really good. And one thing led to another, and there we were in the pre-production in mid to late summer, and recording in November and finishing it in December. And so it all happened really, really fast. There was no master plan that we were going to do this. It just really all kind of organically fell into place. The chemistry of the four of us playing together, we knew something was special, Kelly and I, right away with Kurt Folick and Scotty Griffin. We knew something was really cool and that something was happening here, and the chemistry was just so really cool. And I can't believe it, because I've been doing it for so long. Nothing really happened like that to me that quick, too. Management, and then the record deal, and then right into pre-production, and then right into the studio, and everybody sitting on all this material. So yeah, that's how it happened. It was really a quick turnaround from M3 to getting the album done 6 months later.
If I didn't know the history of you, and you're telling me the story, I would think it was the classic 80s tale of a new band playing live, getting picked up by a manager, and going through, like you say, the classic rock star 80s, tale that's been told so many times. Did it feel like did it feel fresh when it all happened? Did it feel like, wow, this feels like I'm 21 again, and here we go?
Yeah, because obviously me and Kelly knew we were going to be able to play really well together, and we both knew we were songwriters too, and we knew that we could do that. And Scotty Griffin had been playing bass in the band when Kelly left. Scotty is like a multi-instrumentalist. He could play piano, bass, guitar. He's a great singer, and he was very smart. He took the gig as the bass player in LA Guns because it was a good gig. We were touring, me and Phil were recording, and it was just a good move that he made, and he got to tour around the world with us and be with us for a long time. And when Kelly came back, obviously there's the bass spot taken, and Scotty pretty much thought that okay, well, there's my gig. And I told him, because I knew he was a lead guitar player. And I saw him in the studio with us, picking up the guitar and playing it. And I just said, Scotty, you got to play guitar with us. And he was just bowled over, and he was like, I said, you can do this, man. You can play really, really good. So getting Scotty was just a no-brainer, and it worked out perfectly. And we were really ready to do the full audition thing for a singer. That's the most difficult part to find. And we were ready to do it, but we didn't have to do it. I got a call from somebody from Vegas saying, you got to check out, I know you're looking for a singer, you got to check out this guy, Kurt Folick. And I had never met Kurt, and I went up on the internet, and I saw a couple of videos that he had done with original band that he had and with some cover bands that he had. And I knew right away, this guy is like a find. He is just one of those guys. And I know so many of them that are great musicians, and that they kind of fall through the cracks. It's just difficult for them to catch on to something or get signed for whatever reason. And I called him up, and he lives in Florida, and he had moved from Vegas over to Florida. And I told him, I said, listen, man, I think that you can do this. I know you can do this. And when we flew him out to L.A., yeah, we can do this, man, because everybody was sitting on material, but nothing's ever happened to me like that before, where it came together so easy. And that's what happened with this thing with Renegades. It just came together so easy. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. This has been awesome. I've had a great time talking with you. I could talk to you for an hour.
Oh no, that's okay, brother.
But we're East Coast, where we could go on.
Yeah. No problem.
I'm curious, just something completely off the cuff. Being out there so long, how many times do you get a chance to come back? And man, do you miss the pasta out in Boston?
I totally do, man. Yeah, I never really, I knew that I had to come out here to L.A. So, like, when I started recording in 75, I was like, I went down to D.C. I grew up with the Angel guys,
Right.
Me and Frank Domino, the singer from Angel. We grew up in Boston, right outside of Boston, in Revere. And we knew each other since we were really young. And he was playing in some bands before Angel, and they were all playing down in D.C. And I moved down to D.C. and then moved to Indianapolis to do a record with Roadmaster, and Todd Rundgren produced it. And I did a bunch of one-off records with a bunch of bands. And I knew I had to end up in L.A. And so it just because this is where it was all happening with management and machines and record labels, the whole thing. And so I knew I had to end up here. I've been here ever since, but I miss the East Coast because that's where I grew up, and that's where, that's just my roots, and that's the food and the people and everything, and just the whole thing. And so, like, L.A. was someplace I had to be. It wasn't someplace I really wanted to be, and it's always been like that with me. And I'm still out here because, I have to be out here. And but yeah, I totally miss the East Coast, and I do get to come back and visit my family. And since the last 10 to 20 years, my family has all like split up and moved to Florida, up to Maine, and Hampshire. They've all, but I still got all kinds of friends and relatives in Boston and the Revere. But yeah, man, I totally miss it. And I try to go back as much, and a lot of it is me playing there. And so, when I would play there, I'd have like a 40-person guest list, and just have everybody come to my shows. And but I totally miss Boston and the East Coast, and that's where my roots are. And I love that place and that whole area.
Don't miss it today, man. It is damp and crappy, and it's just that typical East Coast cold and damp weather. You won't miss today, man.
Well, you want to know something? I'll tell you what, with it being the same weather out here all the time, kind of, even like, right now, it's Thanksgiving, and it's like we're at the end of November, and sometimes even Christmas, too. It's the same weather. It's in the 70s, and it's sunny out. But I like the 4-season weather too. I really miss that, and I know that sometimes it's difficult, and it's rainy and then snowy and cold and like really hard to get your car going. But I kind of miss that whole thing, and I've always missed it. And that 4-season thing is something that unless you move away from there, you won't believe it how much you kind of miss it, because the weather, is great out here, but it's kind of like one thing all the time, and it gets a little bit boring too. It's a weird thing to say, because I know some people are cold in the weather back there, and they're going, yeah, but it's really sunny out there and it's nice. Yeah, but that gets kind of boring too.
Is it really? To not only that, but isn't it something like family? Because there's such a family vibe. I always found this too in where I've traveled. There's always a great family vibe about people in the East Coast.
Oh, totally, man. And that's like something that's lacking out here too. That whole community feel, that whole thing of everybody's kind of connected, and you don't realize until you move away how close New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, Philadelphia, it's all clustered together. So everybody's kind of melded together, and there's like a real community feel. Everybody feels, we're East Coast. Out here, it's very, there's a lot of transplants, and there's a lot of people from all over the place, so there's not a real community feel. I mean, the most community feel that I've gotten was in the 80s, when all of the bands were together out here, and we had a kind of a community feel. We were all really connected, whether it was, because I was like fortunate, I was involved with both scenes of metal that came out of the 80s here in LA. I was with WASP, Motley, Rat, Doc, and Great White in the first part of the 80s. I got to be part of that. And then that second wave with Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, Faster Pussycat, Jet Boy, that I got to be part of that too. In those 10 years, there was like a real community feel. All the bands were friends with each other. We were either touring with each other, or we ran into each other on the tours. And when we were off the road, we were all hanging on the strip together. So that was the most community feel. But out here, there's so many transplants, and you don't really get that feel of the East Coast, where everybody feels that they belong together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So think about, when I think about that time, and I think about LA Guns and the early days of WASP, two bands that I never really put in. I always thought that was the beginning of kind of like, well, not really the beginning, but part of a harder edge part of the 80s, instead of calling it hair band. I hate that. Hair bands. Yeah, I hate that. I hate that. When WASP was a hard hitting band, and LA Guns was to me like it was a street band. It was
totally.
Of that time. I didn't put them in with the Poisons of the world. And I was talking with Don Dokken about it, because I didn't even consider Dokken part of that hair metal, because Tooth and Nail was an album that Scorpions, Maiden,
totally.
Priest, and you guys kind of, to me, fit in that, where you're not the hair band. You are the street rock and roll metal bands that stayed
absolutely
true. Yeah.
And it was so prevalent to me too when I came out of WASP, because WASP was so theatrical and such a big stage show, and actually almost wearing stage outfits all the time, that we didn't even know about this second wave of metal that was coming out of LA. All of those bands I mentioned from the first part of the 80s, like Doc and Doc and Wasp and Motley and Rat, we were touring so much and so busy. We didn't even know about this second wave that was happening in LA with G&R and LA Guns and Faster and all those bands. We didn't even know about it. There was this second wave that was happening around town. So when I got out of WASP and I saw how stripped down LA Guns was, it was really cool to me. It was like, wow, this is really, really cool. It's very Aerosmithy, and it was very, just all about the music, and it was just a very street vibe band. And yeah, I never understood the hair metal moniker either, because everybody's had long hair since the 60s and through
right.
the 70s, and I just never understood how we got tagged as hair metal, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it was bigger hair. But yeah, I totally agree with you. LA Guns was totally a stripped-down band, street level, and very accessible, and, you know, it was just a real pleasure going from WASP. I loved being in WASP. I just thought it was a great band, and we sounded and looked great, and we were just knocking people over live and doing some really great recordings. But coming into LA Guns was kind of a pleasure because, like I said, it was getting back into a street vibe, and it was really all about the music and just, you know, not so much about being theatrically good. It was just being sonically good, and it was a real pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Hey, listen, stay safe and have a very blessed and a great Christmas and a great holiday, sir.
Hey, Michael, listen, you be safe with your family too, and like we got a whole slew of dates for 2021. Everything from 2020 moved into 2021, and if we're playing around your area, come backstage and say hi. All right, brother?
I would love to. Thank you so much. Take care. God bless, Steve.
Okay, you too, brother. Have a great Christmas. I'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.